The food service, hospitality, and retail industries are evolving in ways you've never heard of until now. Hosted by global industry technovator Rob Grimes and powered by the IFBTA, Tech Bites is your go-to podcast, putting technology innovation and trends on the menu.
Well, this is a real pleasure to have a conversation with Mike Axiotis, the CEO of Lehigh Valley Restaurant Brands. And actually, we are in Lehigh Valley, right?
We are.
And we're in Allentown.
We're in Allentown. Yes, sir.
So Mike and I have been getting to know each other over the last year and just running into all the different industry events and things such as that. But why don't you give us a little bit background on Lehigh Valley Restaurant Brands?
Absolutely, yeah. So Lehigh Valley Restaurant Brands just recently went through a rebranding. We were known as Lehigh Valley Restaurant Group since 1993. And in late 2024, we rebranded as Lehigh Valley Restaurant Brands. Lehigh Valley Restaurant
Does that
Group,
imply there's more than one brand?
That is correct.
Okay.
Yeah. So obviously we're sitting here in our first Red Robin that was opened in 1993. We now have 20 Red Robin restaurants today since 1993, and we ventured into a new brand called Wingstop. So we're also the brand partners of Wingstop restaurants here in the Lehigh Valley and Eastern and Central Pennsylvania since 2022. We currently have 17 Wingstop restaurants, which is high growth, fast growth. We have plans to continue to grow our Wingstop business in the foreseeable future. Red Robin as well is growing those in the future as well. And big question mark as to what will the future brands under Lehigh Valley Restaurant Brands entail.
But we're not going to break any secrets here in that.
We will not.
But how about this? You're obviously right in there as a restaurant franchisee.
Correct.
But at the same time, you actually didn't always start that way. You were in the restaurant business yourself.
I was. Yeah. So at the ripe old age of 18, I opened a restaurant with my sister and my uncle after graduating from high school. And
do they still talk to you?
They do, yeah. They
okay,
do,
I just want to make sure that we're okay with that, right?
We are good, yeah. We love each other. I started working for my uncle when I was 11 years old as a busser, a dishwasher, cook, a host, the whole shebang. He kind of ran me through all the circles of development in the restaurant industry. And the biggest thing I learned from him was hospitality and work ethic. And that carries through to this day, the principles and values that he instilled in me as a young man working in the restaurant industry. And by the time I was a senior in high school, he had me basically as a floor manager running shifts in his restaurant, to the point where he trusted me so much to be his business partner right out of high school.
And so you became partners.
I did, yeah.
Wow, that's really cool.
Yeah. So I did that for 5 years, and that was an epic failure. To be honest with you, it was an epic failure.
The working relationship or the
business?
The business.
The business was a failure. And we learned a lot. My sister and I, we paid our tuition, let's just say.
Right.
It's just like going to college. We paid tuition in real life experience to shape us into who we are today. My sister is also a franchisee of a concept, but it's a doggy daycare, canine resorts.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So she.
But a lot of the models probably about the same, right?
Yeah.
I mean, you probably can compare notes.
Without a doubt.
Different type of
doubt.
Customer, though.
It is very different.
I don't know who's got the. We don't want to go down that path. Who's got the better one, right? The more fun to be with, but I think that's there. But it's interesting that you were talking about how your uncle helped to instill in you the hospitality and something that you use to this day. And of course, we are the hospitality industry.
Yeah.
But at the same time, you're in a franchisor environment. And do those principles that you learned in there, have they played forward even in an environment that perhaps maybe a little bit more structured in what you do?
Well, that's the element we were missing. We were missing the structure. We kind of played by our own rules and made the rules up every day as we went along. So the discipline of having systems is what makes restaurant franchising successful. Mm-hmm. But it only makes it successful to a point. because you got to add in the hospitality piece, and you have to add in understanding restaurant operations. The systems part, if you bake that in, it's almost like the turbocharging, if you will. That'll help turbocharge your ability to grow and scale in the restaurant industry. I think a lot of folks in franchising, maybe they have an engineering mindset or they have a military
manufacturing,
background.
right? I mean, people talk to restaurant industries about manufacturing, right?
Yeah. I think hospitality is a competitive edge because a lot of places, they're systematic and they crank out food and they crank out their products over and over and over again. And that's good to a point. But how do you differentiate yourself from your competitors is the hospitality piece, and hiring great people and teaching them how to be friendly and how to go above and beyond. I think service is the table stakes to just be at par level with everyone, but hospitality is that extra, boost that gives you the competitive edge to somebody else that doesn't do it. Chick-fil-A is a great example of that, and I shouldn't call them out because they're a competitor of mine, but Chick-fil-A has done a great job with hospitality.
They have.
Or Ritz-Carlton.
They have. And it's,
right?
What I find very interesting though, well, you're talking about customer service, hospitality,
right.
But you're also talking about brands, especially if you talk about somebody like a Ritz-Carlton that is very focused on the individual experience as well. The personalization for one person, even though they're part of a brand, right? They're not an independent. But you've also used the word system a few times here, but you weren't referring to systems like technology. You were referring to the systems of how they run their operations.
Well, let's bake technology into that because that's a big part of the equation. How do you do inventory? What kind of POS system do you use? What kind of online ordering system do you use? And big brands have the capability to invest in having those right systems and technologies to build a great model and a great brand, which also helps to differentiate against competition.
But it becomes a lot easier today because even for an independent, they can come up to speed with technology where in the past you really had to have a lot of bucks and a lot of infrastructure behind you to do it. Today, it's a lot easier to take online ordering. It's a lot easier to be seen and have a website. And so maybe, the technology part isn't as much thought about sometimes as it used to be when they were worried about what kind of kitchen equipment were you going to have, right? Because there's a package and things that they can take advantage of, even for a startup.
Sure. Most definitely.
So if you take a look at that and you take a look at the word hospitality and your background and you take a look at technology, how do these two things, from your perspective, because you started also as an individual, operator, how, in your perspective, do they work well together and offer an advantage, but also where are the challenges?
Yeah, I mean, most definitely. You're only as good as the last burger you serve or the last order of wings that you serve. And at the end of the day, it's like, how they call it farm to table, right?
Yep.
In our industry, it's like, from the back door.
Farm to fork.
Yeah, farm to fork, right? How does it all start from the flow of, onboarding a team member? Is there technology that you use today? Like for us, we use AI with our onboarding. I remember when I first started in this industry, it took, almost a month from start to finish when you would take an applicant from the time they would, fill out their application to the time it hit the manager's desk, to the time you interviewed them, to picking up the phone and calling them, bringing them in for an interview or even a pre-screen over the phone, bringing them back for a second.
Right.
To then filling out all their new hire paperwork.
Right? Yeah, and how long does that take?
Right. So with technology, those that have the best systems can hire people very fast. And in today's world, people don't want to wait around weeks or even days to get a job.
Well, they may get a job with somebody else.
In hours.
Right.
Hours.
But
it's hours now in seconds.
You're talking about AI in here, and I know that, that's a conversation you and I have had quite a bit of conversation on. But when we're talking about that, did you find these solutions that you wanted yourself? Are you doing it yourself? because you like tech, or are you doing it and using it because your suppliers and vendors are actually bringing it to the table for you?
All of the above, right? I think it's not a one size fits all. First of all, you get called on, right? You get emails, you get phone calls, you get things in the mail, where vendors are constantly soliciting you for their next gadget, if you will, the next sexy gadget. The other part of it is you got to be eyes wide open in this industry and be paying attention to what's out there, going to conferences, going to trade shows, attending webinars, reading up on the latest association news, right? Where we have, the National Restaurant Association, which I'm a board member and active member at the state and national level. Your association as well. We're active members of that, and really staying plugged into what's going on out there so that you can seek out how to find the latest and greatest rather than just waiting for people
but not
to come
everybody
to you.
not everybody has the time to go figure that out. Not everybody has a head of IT like Ed, who's on our board, to be able, and his background comes from an extensive IT background. So not everybody has that luxury. If you're a independent or you're a startup and you're trying to navigate the world, and I'm not going to assume that all startups start up by people who came from the industry either, right? So they have sort of separate challenges to figure out, what to use, how to use it. So how do you see, since you Pennsylvania Restaurant Association, the National Restaurant Association, how do you see providing those resources and being able to help them?
That's a great question. I don't know if I have the exact answer for you, other than I think that in order to be successful at anything in life, whether it's in the restaurant business or the technology business or the landscaping business or the grocery business, you have to be engaged. So the best word I have for you here is engagement. If you stay within your box, inside your little four walls, or you put those blinders on, so you have to be engaged and you have to ask questions. And for the things that you don't know, so like today, we got to spend a great day together where you came in and you were seeking knowledge of, hey, tell me about your business. And you were able to offer some advice to us to say, well, here's what I know about technology.
I also told you that nobody takes free advice.
Yeah.
So I don't expect you to do any of it.
I appreciate that. But I think that's what it's all about, though. It's about building relationships and building your network and asking people outside of your industry, hey, what do you do and how do you do it? The other thing that I'm a big believer in personally is that you shouldn't always just go to trade shows and listen to webinars that only have to do with your industry.
Absolutely.
Go out and listen to what other industries are doing, because a lot of those things are translatable.
They are, but they may not have thought about it.
Yeah.
And, that is one of the nice things, either by being able to visit other industries or other parts of the world, that you get to see a lot of things that people are doing. And even though they didn't think about it, I mean, some of the best solutions we were talking about today, where we see people who are developing custom solutions, including smaller operators, right, are developing. It's just because they don't know what they don't know. They don't know what's out there. And gee, what if you took this and you used it with that? Because those people don't have the operational knowledge.
Correct. Yeah.
So you got to somehow marry the two. So in the world of
one
tech,
more thing.
Yeah.
We can learn from our employees too. All right. Our employees are a wealth of knowledge. If you ever want to figure anything out in our industry, in the restaurant industry, is go into the operation and ask the dishwasher, ask the line cook, ask the busser and the bar and the host or whatever. They're going to tell you what's broken, and they may even have ideas on how to fix it. And also, too, from a technology standpoint, they're more in tune with the latest technology trends than we are at times, and they can open our eyes to some of those things.
Well, that actually goes, so that's interesting because it's a two-way street. So one thing for any operator, and by the way, just because you were an operator, just because you worked the floor 30 years ago doesn't mean that you still know how to work the floor, because things change, right?
Yeah.
So in reality, your employees are also customers. They go out, they buy stuff, they see other things, so they can tell you who's doing good things and bad things, including your competition. out there. But at the same time, your customers can too, because they're the ones who are dictating what type of payments do you need to take. Can I pay on my watch? Can I do this? Can I do that? Why can't I fill out a survey or order online? So a lot of times they expect you to do those things. But why it's a two-way street is because when you're doing your research, you just said coming into the restaurant and see how they're doing the cooking and tell you about the equipment. But at the same time, why would you ever select a system for your restaurants and not have those people have to use it in the room when the demos occur? So many people don't do that.
We should. Yeah. We do that actually. We have a nice sampling of different layers of the organization that are part of committees, if you will, to say, you're part of this committee to test this new technology, whether it be handheld devices, online ordering systems, call centers.
Absolutely.
Everything. And we never, ever just roll things out and say, here you go figure it out. We always
you need
test.
them to be your evangelist.
Yeah. We test and we test and we test. And then we work out the bugs and the kinks. And then from there, we decide whether or not we're going to roll this out to the rest of the organization.
Well, so there's a lot of interesting tech out there. And I do know that you are researching and you're having the conversations with people and you're figuring out what's out there and you're going to the conferences, you're hearing what people are using. So I'm curious, what is it that you think is going to have the greatest impact on the industry? I'm putting you in an industry box here because you're also representing the industry. So what's going to have the greatest impact on the industry in the next 3 to 5 years? And then what's going to have the greatest impact as far as technology for your business?
Workforce development, number one, is going to have an impact on the industry. As the generational shifts continue to happen, as less people, because of population and age gaps, are coming into the workforce and a lot are exiting, that's going to disrupt the industry, which is going to force them into adopting technology or a hybrid. And I'm big on hybrid approaches to things. And it's got to be high touch, high tech, right? Because you can't take the hospitality out of the equation when it comes to the restaurant industry. Not. But how do you use technology as your friend, not your foe? Because a lot of times, naturally, your team members will think that, oh, is this going to replace me? Are you putting this in because you want to cut labor?
That.
Are you putting this in because you want to replace me? No. We want to enhance your ability to do your job so that you can be more productive to take care of the guests. Because at the end of the day, you still have to meet the demands of the guests. And you have to meet the demands of your team. And your team expects more. Your team wants you to invest back into the facility.
And by the way, they may take a job with you versus somebody else because you've invested in things to help them do their job better.
Right.
There's a selling point.
Right.
Which a lot of people don't look at it that way. And they say invest, to get the best team members because why would I want to work somewhere that they don't help me to be successful in my job? So it's a little bit, different there. But also, if you're thinking about investing, so you said workforce management, but also the nature of the industry is probably going to change. We talked about vending today. There's partnerships between, you have convenience stores that have restaurants in them, and everybody wants fresh food. So it seems like the days of the old rollers for hot dogs and the pressed, I don't know what, is gone because even the quick service restaurants want to do fresh meat. So how do you see those types of opportunities changing for expansion?
Well, everything goes full circle, right? A lot of times old comes back to new.
Deja vu.
The automat is starting to make its way back.
That's so funny. Right? You're like the third person who's mentioned the automat in 3 weeks.
That's making its way back, But how do you take old and marry it with new and use technology to do it in a meaningful way? And I think that we just have to be at the forefront of those things and constantly, thinking ahead. How do you build a more efficient restaurant? How do you build a more eco-friendly restaurant? That's the other thing is you also have environmental and governmental demands that are putting pressure on the industry for us to be better stewards of the environment. How does packaging play a role in that? How does
places that aren't allowing gas cooking?
Correct.
Right?
Yeah.
Gas cars, gas cooking. I mean, you can sort of see it, right?
And the materials that you use to build your restaurant. Everything, costs are going up. labor costs have gone up, material costs have gone up. So naturally, what's going to happen? Everyone's going to figure out, how do you get around those things?
Right.
So do you build a smaller footprint, a more eco-friendly footprint, but yet doing it without putting an artificial governor on your ability to drive sales and efficiency out of that box?
Right. But that, by the way, see, that's a good note. A lot of people are looking at smaller footprint, spaces or different ways of serving, and they want to maintain the hospitality, which is a whole conversation in itself, because you might take out the interaction and the interpersonal piece, right? Or the culture of the unit. But at the same time, by using technology, especially robotics and things like that, you're able to perhaps do things in a smaller space and more safely, and still not do away with the food that you're serving and the quality.
I think the importance is always to try to keep some sort of balance in play, where you don't swing the pendulum so far to the one side that it actually scares people, right? Or you alienate certain guests, certain consumers, certain segments of our industry, because we want to be friendly to everybody, right? I mean, we're an industry of inclusion. Our industry has always been big from before inclusion was even a buzzword. Right. We were an industry of diversity and inclusion. And, how do you include everybody in that conversation without alienating?
You have to give the tools for the staff,
right?
No matter where you're located,
right?
Because, and that can be international as well. Your guests are coming from all over the place. So you're inclusive with the guests as well, because you have to make 6 generations of, technology, if you want to look at it that way. And by the way, to your workforce piece, one of the things of diversity I found is it's not always what you assume, but you might throw in senior citizens in that realm as well. And they make great employees who are loyal, less turnover. But the technology, even though the backbone may be the same, how they interact with it may be different, right? Yeah. So we have to be able to deal with that.
100%.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of opportunities. So, okay, so we have the workforce, and we have technologies. You mentioned AI that you were using, and you said to us that you some of it you had to figure out yourself, and some maybe the vendors are catching up. You've talked about other industries or being open to looking at other things, attending conferences, trading notes. So, in your personal life, we all use technology. So, is there something exciting that's coming along that you just think is like the coolest thing, and you're waiting to see what happens with that?
On a personal level, that's a great question. I think these smart houses. See, now what's interesting is in my personal life, I try to keep life simple, very simple. In business and in the restaurants, I'm all in on bleeding edge technology to make all of our team members and guest experiences the best it could be. But at home, I still push a button and flick a switch to turn my lights on, and I still have the garage door opener on my visor. But I'm very intrigued by all of the cool gadgets you can incorporate into your house, from turning on lights and air conditioning and music and all of that stuff to create a smart home, if you will. I'm very intrigued by that.
So that's that's a very interesting example and a great answer to that question. So let's just talk about that for a minute. So first of all,
and one more thing.
Yeah.
Having an AI personal assistant, like that's something that I have been really working on over the last year. Is I've been trying to figure out how to buy back time.
Does it have a name?
Because no one can buy back time. I haven't named it. But I use ChatGPT quite a bit for my personal assistant. Right. But it knows my name and it knows who I am. And it's become so smart. I was an early adopter of it in 2023 that it now knows my writing style. It knows how I think.
I just want to point out, wait.
Really
an early adopter in 2023. What year is this? First half of 25, right?
Yeah.
So early
ChatGPT.
I get that. But you think about the speed of how fast that technology is moving.
Yeah.
But, you have a wealth of information out there. I'm sure even in this restaurant, you've done videos, training videos, you've given speeches that are probably on board, you gave out awards to your employees.
Absolutely.
Have you thought about taking some of that video and stuff and also putting that, or things you've written, put it into ChatGPT so it really becomes your voice in your style?
I have not done that.
But you could.
I could,
because,
yes.
Because sometimes people see through it and they know what you're doing.
Yes.
And so if you have that kind of material out there, at least it can start to We're not replacing you,
Right.
but it can start to really help you and give it in the voice, including writing the notes or how you analyze things, right? Your expertise.
100%. Now, the one thing is I never trust what it says initially. I'm constantly tweaking and adjusting, and I build in a framework. So I don't want it to completely take my brain power away. So I still want my personality in there. I still want my analytical thoughts in there. I just use it to refine and be like my wordsmith partner, if you will,
Right.
to really polish things up for me. But for me, it's really been about productivity and being more efficient and being able to do more, knowing that time is a commodity, right? And we're not making more time. You can't buy more time. So how do you make your time more valuable and more efficient?
Absolutely.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, but that's why people aren't necessarily. So if we go back to your house,
Yeah.
as an example, so you've given the examples of the garage door opener and the lights and stuff. And we do know people who walk in their house and say, "Hey Siri," or "Hey Alexa," turn up the lights, give me music, right?
Yeah. Order my groceries for me.
Yeah, but here's the interesting thing about that. Whether you know it or not, and this is the conversation on AI, which people know. I hate talking about AI as AI. I like talking about how to use it, right?
Right.
So those light bulbs that you're buying have gone to LEDs, right? And a lot of those LEDs are actually smart. And the next, the oven that you buy and all the equipment you buy in your house is probably communicating with something, knows when it's going to break down. And just because you don't choose to take advantage of the fact, it behind the scenes, without you knowing it, may be adjusting lights or doing things for your energy consumption, because it's smart enough to know that, and it gets to the resources because you gave it a connection.
Sure.
And then if you decide to maybe engage and connect it into your home ecosystem, you will. But a lot of times you don't think about it. You put an app on your phone and you bought a lock for your house and you put a proximity thing and you just happen to walk up to the house and you're like, how come the alarm's off and whatever? And you didn't really think about it.
Yeah.
But you're probably moving along in your house. The one thing I would say to you is that I follow what goes on in the house, because whatever goes on in the house and becomes a consumer product, the price comes down, and then I go, how come it can't be used here? Right? How come we can't know what's it? How come we can't know when something's expiring in the refrigerator? Why do I have to take an inventory when a smart refrigerator knows it?
Yeah.
And does a shopping list, by the way. So your people probably have to go ahead and queue in, the shopping list when you're ordering.
You got to count what's on hand. Then you have to establish a par.
Mm-hmm.
Then you got to know how to order to that par, and also know, all right, well, it's going to rain this week, so I'm going to be busier. It's going to be beautiful outside. I'm going to be slower, or it's going to snow. We're going to be dead. Or I have a concert that's right across the street from the Hershey Park Arena, and we're going to be up 50% in sales. Does it have those capabilities? I'm sure it does.
It does, or you teach it to do it.
Now you're relying on human beings to constantly remember all of those
that's right.
things.
So if you document
or even if
it,
a competitor opens up around the corner, is that going to help you or hurt you? And by how much?
well, then you have to know what questions to ask. And one of the problems today is it's not just what question to ask, but how do you phrase it? It might take you a bunch of times. The problem is nobody records and remembers, and so the next time they go through the whole process again.
For sure.
I don't know who does the shopping for the groceries at home and who does what. And if you're thinking about having a barbecue this weekend,
Right.
Yeah. We had dinner with somebody recently who was, a green egg fan, right?
Yeah.
And so he was talking about barbecue, and, you would go through the same process. You're just not thinking about it that way. Is it going to rain this weekend? How much food do I need to get? How many people are coming over? What do I have in the fridge? Right? So, I don't know, sounds like what you're doing here, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And you and I were talking earlier today about, I'm sure if you calculate, regardless of whatever system you're in, if you're an operator out there, whether you have 50 or 100 or even 10 restaurants, and the number of shifts and the number of managers and the number of weeks and operating days and operating hours you have where managers have to do these tasks. They
Right.
have to order, they have to hire, they have to schedule, they have to forecast. Those are millions upon millions of hours
Absolutely.
that could be reinvested back into spending more time coaching, developing, training, being on the floor, driving a great guest experience for the team and the guests, which will eventually drive sales and profitability. So again, it's not about replacing, it's about reallocating those
Right.
hours in that time of mundane tasks into more, productivity driven tasks and time.
And by the way, I would point out that our industry, people might not think it's that complex, but in fact, we're working with fresh food, we're working with safety, we're working with customers. It's not like a retail place where you order a certain amount of things off the shelf and you know what it is and you know what you're doing there. Not that retail is, easy,
Sure.
but it's a little bit different. But also, people start their careers in this industry, and we may be the first time today. I've been giving this a lot of thought. We may actually teach people those hospitality skills that you just naturally knew when you were growing up and your uncle taught you.
Yeah.
Because today they're spending all that time from 2 or 3 years old on their PC, or they have a headset on and they're not paying attention. And yes, I do see that we have things on the table that were put here to keep people occupied.
Sure.
But they don't have that skill set. We may be the industry of lesson, the first exposure they have to have with dealings with other people.
We are, and we always were, even prior. I always, was very proud to say that, we're the industry of opportunity, but we're also the entry level for teaching people skills, essential skills in life, where, they get comfortable talking to people.
Right.
They get comfortable interacting with people. And then they take those skills onto their career and their life, their real jobs, even though these are real jobs. Becoming a restaurant manager or general manager or an executive in a restaurant organization are real jobs. But if they decide to not stay in our industry, they still remember those life skills that they learned working in our industry.
They do, but there's so many other industries that those same skills are used in as well, because now the food service restaurant industry is crossing over so many boundaries today. When you see Tommy Bahama putting restaurants in, and you see almost every type of business around is very focused because everybody eats. I can't say that they all sleep, but they may not sleep in a hotel.
It's an essential part of life.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So it's like one of the more exciting things that we get to help drive. Okay,
but doing it in a social way really helps people in their life as well. It helps boost morale, makes you feel good when you go and break bread with somebody.
Absolutely.
You learn so much about people.
We won't take the
restaurant.
hospitality out with technology, but we may use technology to help spread and keep that hospitality. I think, to your point, what we're going to find ourselves doing is having to teach our personality, our culture to our employees, and keep that as we deal with our customers, because a lot more and more of those customers are digital customers who may never actually meet us, but they're going to know our food products. And by the way, they're going to be represented by us. I would have said by a driver who we might have to do delivery, but it might not. It actually could be by a drone or a driverless automobile, which isn't so far off. So I think that we have to teach that skill set and embed it and not lose that. So, all right. So on the personal side, so the technology that I'm giving you for the holidays this year is going to be what? What's the wish list of what I should give you? You may not get it, but I just want to know what it is.
Yeah.
Not too expensive.
That's a great question, Rob. It's got to have to do something with smart home technology.
But you don't want to use it. So what are we going to use? What would it be?
Yeah.
Is it a voice activated thing? Is it something? Is it a 3D television? I mean, what do you think what's it going to be?
Something voice activated.
Voice activated.
Voice activated. Yeah.
Okay. Well, listen, on my way to
and it has to be in your voice tone too, so that I think that I'm talking to my good friend Rob every day, and he's reminded me to do something that I wasn't supposed to not forget to do, like exercise or take my vitamins in the morning.
Oh, there is such a. It could also be your school teacher who used to wrap your knuckles with whatever. They don't do that anymore, but you might want to listen to them too, right?
Sure.
Or your mother, right? We were doing that. Yeah. But it's funny because on the way here today, because I had to drive, I was actually programming, I was paying attention, but I was programming Waze, and I was realizing how many new voices they have. So I was trying to decide what voice do I want.
I have the Australian one.
I have an Australian one. I put that on there.
My son hates it. He's like, change that, Dad. I don't like that voice. And I'm like, well, as long as you don't like
I
it,
like the
it.
accent.
Yeah, I do.
You know, and then I was
Yeah.
screwing around with something on my PC to have voice activate
Yeah.
anything that comes up. It says, "Do you want to read it out?" So I try somebody from India, speaking English just to hear how it sounds.
Yeah.
It depends
Yeah.
maybe what I'm doing, but I think that that's really great. So I will tell you what I ended up choosing this morning. I'm going to test it on. I'm going to drive somebody nuts.
Yeah.
They have a 70s DJ.
Oh, that's awesome.
So I'm going to have a 70s
Love it.
DJ talk to me on the way to New York this afternoon. So
That's fantastic.
I don't know what it's going to Wolfman Jack, but I think that might be 70s or 60s. I'm not sure. Nobody knows who Wolfman Jack is, but we'll figure American Graffiti. We'll figure that one out. So, well, listen, It's been great having a conversation, and I actually look forward to seeing where these conversations go in the next 6 to 12 months, because as you pointed out, since you're early adopter in 23, a year and a half ago, I don't know what you're going to be adopting in the next 6 to 12 months, but I'm sure it's going to be a lot of
I'm
conversations.
sure it'll be a game changer for sure. Thank you.
Well, I hope so. So Mike Axiotis, and the CEO of the Lehigh Valley Restaurant Brands, and future chairman of the National Restaurant Association.
Thank you.
And it's been a pleasure to not only talk with you, but to share some ideas and see where they go. So thank you for joining us on Tech Bites. This podcast is brought to you by the International Food and Beverage Technology Association. The IFBTA is the industry's voice of food service, hospitality, and retail technology, providing thought leadership as your single, impartial, and go-to resource. The IFBTA offers in-person and online communities to connect with your peers, the exchange, an all-encompassing global technology resource, and an industry-wide professional education and certification program. The bottom line is the IFBTA is your place to gather, learn, and share in conversations like the one we're having today. Thank you for joining us on this episode of Tech Bites, powered by the IFBTA. I'm Rob Grimes, your host, and I look forward to taking our next bite of technology together.